Abu Bakr didn't take the title king. He didn't take the title emperor. He took the title follower of the messenger of God and became the ruler of this Muslim-controlled chunk of Arabia. He made two armies. He sent one army from Yathrib due east, and he sent the other army south to Yemen. And his goal is to finally, once and for all, conquer Arabia and rule it. And actually, he was ruling from Mecca at that point. The guy he put in charge of his army that went east was Khalid ibn Walid. And Khalid will do a series of battles against a heretic who was claiming to be the real prophet in an event called the Ridda Wars. And Khalid will win battle after battle after battle. And by 633, Arabia is unified. So the campaign started in 632. It took less than a year. And in part because of Khalid's decisive victories in the center of Arabia. At that point, there's argument amongst historians exactly what happened next. Did Abu Bakr order Khalid to keep going, or did he tell Khalid to stop? It's entirely possible either is true. He doesn't stop. That's the important thing. Whether he was told to stop or told to keep going, he doesn't stop. And he goes towards the very southern tip of Iraq. So see where it says Sabur? He's headed in that direction. He ends up fighting a battle in what is today Kuwait. It's called the Battle of the Chains. The Persian general Hormuzd chains up his elite soldiers to show the Arabs that there is no retreat, that the Persians will fight to the death because they've made it so they can't retreat because they're chained together. But also because Khalid relied heavily on cavalry, it would be impossible to do a cavalry charge through them because there are chains in between them, so there's no way to get through. What Khalid liked to, the way battles went back then, everybody did this, the Persians, the Romans, everybody did this, is they would send champions to go fight each other before the battle. But what the Arabs liked to do was first poetry. So they would get their best improv poet, because they would improv right there. They didn't have a poem written in advance. And they would get that poet to shout to the other army a poem. And the belief was that if you shouted a good enough poem, the other side should give you the field and walk away. And of course, the Persians are like, screw you, we don't even speak Arabic, we don't know what you're saying. So after the Arab shouts this poetry at the Persians who are annoyed, Khalid walks out and says, I'm my champion. I'll fight the Persian champion. That's a problem for the Persian general then, because if he doesn't go fight, it's general versus general. If he doesn't make it general versus general, it makes him look like a coward. So the Persian general goes, okay, let me fight. And they go out and they fight, and Khalid ibn Walid kills him within like 30 seconds. It's a really quick fight. And so now the Persians are going to go into the battle without their general. And what Khalid did was he just kept using his cavalry to do these charges against the Persians that just kept them off balance until finally he broke up their order. And what they should have done was they should have repositioned, or they should have retreated a little bit and then repositioned, but they can't because they're chained together. And he swings his cavalry around the backside and starts harassing them, and he tears them to pieces. The estimate is that he brought 18,000 men against 20,000 Persians, the same Persians who tore those Romans to pieces almost 700 years prior. And he walked away with a couple hundred killed, and the Persians lost, and most were killed or captured. And then what he's going to do is he's going to work his way along the western bank of the Euphrates River. And his goal is the city that's labeled as Herat there. At the time, it was called Hira, or at least the Arabs called it Hira. And he's heading towards Hira. And he'll fight 3 more battles. The rivers Walaja, and I'm drawing Ulais. Walaja Ulais in the river. And one of the battles, I don't remember which one, I'm slightly embarrassed, but not really. There's 50 battles, dude. I can't keep all this straight in my head. At one of the battles, one of the Persian generals is like, screw this, because Khalid kept going, I'll be your champion. And he walks out, now the Persian general is stuck doing the same thing. And the first thing that happens in the opening moments of the battle is the Persian general gets killed. And so this Persian general goes, okay, I bet that bastard's gonna do this again. So he buried a dozen Persian soldiers in the battlefield right where he thought the challenge would take place with straws so they could breathe through it. He buried them in the night so that in the morning they would come out and do the challenge. And then what was supposed to happen is once the challenge started, the 12 Persian soldiers would jump up and they just murder Khalid right there. So Khalid walks out, the Persian general walks out, the 12 men jump up, and one of Khalid's cousins was in the army, the Muslim Arab army. And he's like, that's not fair. And he runs out and joins Khalid, and the two men murder the 13 Persians. And then they destroy the Persian army. And he would use different tactics every time. And one of the battles, what he did was he'd snuck 2 cavalry units behind a hill, and the Persians were in between his men on the other side of the hill and his army. And he just kept slowly backing his army up and making a circle, a half circle out of it. So the Persians would kind of go into the middle, and then he signaled his cavalry that came riding over the hill, and they attacked the Persians from behind, completely surrounded, destroys them. He captures Hira, and then on the way, so see where it says Peraz Sabur? That is Anbar, the city of Anbar in Iraq today. He's heading towards that place. That's where he wants to go. And he's going to fight 3 battles, one after the other in succession. And here's what he does. So there were 60,000 Persian soldiers in 3 separate armies, 20,000 each. And they're coming for him. And by this point, he's down to 15,000 men. Because even though he keeps winning, he's still taking losses. So it's going to be 4-to-1 odds if he lets those 3 Persian armies merge together. And he's thinking, I don't think I can beat 60,000 men with 15,000 men. So if I'm going to win, I'm going to have to attack them piecemeal. I'm going to have to hit each of the 3 Persian units before they get together. So he races his army as fast as he can towards the first one. But first, he cuts his army into 3 5,000-man units. And he tells them, we're going to arrive at 2 a.m., and he gives them a date, like 2 weeks in advance. And he says, I need you at this location, at this time, on this day. Go. And they take 3 different paths, and they're going to come at this Persian unit, and he's guessing where he thinks that Persian unit will have arrived to by that point. I challenge you, this is my challenge. 3 of you and 2 of your best friends, get into 3 separate cars, and you can use GPS. Pick a spot somewhere on the other side of the US, because it needs to be a long road trip, right? 3 days. I'm not even going to make it 2 weeks, just 3 days. So I don't care where you want to go, Washington or the other Washington. Either way, it'll work out to be about the same. But make the 3 of you take 3 separate paths and then time it so that you arrive at the exact same moment. Bet you can't do it. Now take away GPS and navigate at night, trying to guess where you think the enemy army is going to be. They're there when the 3 armies converge at the exact same moment. They catch the Persians asleep in their camp. They tear them to pieces. He's like, all right, 1 down, 2 to go. He looks at his men and he goes, this is where the Persian army is the next one's going to be. And he tells them, I want you there this day, this time. Go. 3 different ways. And the 3 units charge as fast as they can. And they get there. And the Persian army is there. And he destroys that one too. And then he tells his men, all right, we got 1 more. 1 more. And go. and they arrive at the right time, on the right day, in the spot where the Persians were at night, and they wiped out the third 20,000 man unit with almost no losses. They dispatched 60,000 men in a maneuver that I bet a contemporary military force would never be able to execute, let alone 3 times in a row. Insane. It shouldn't be doable.